This week, fact-checking the presidential contenders. Stormzy takes us for a ride through his hometown. And Chris takes us for a ride through his kitchen. Welcome to Click. I hope you're well. As we head into autumn, the world has some pretty big milestones ahead of it. In the short term, the biggest is the US election.
The election of the moment always feels like the biggest yet, but this comes at a time when trust in politics and politicians is at a real low.
The final presidential debate has now taken place, and the idea, of course, is that these debates should tell voters about the candidates' policies and help them to make an informed decision at the ballot box.
But as well as becoming big, mud-slinging, shouty arguments, the rallies and debates have also been riddled with untruths.
We live in a time when disinformation is dividing us and entrenching us to the point where it's threatening democracies around the world. If you can't believe what you see, read and hear, including what comes out of politicians' mouths, how can you make the right decision? It's become such a widespread issue that some news organisations now have dedicated fact-checking services, and there are companies around the world whose sole job is to spot the lies. But keeping up with the volume of misinformation out there is a hard task. Meet Devika, who's part of a team of fact-checkers who were recently tasked with monitoring the presidential debates live. But not all of her team members were human.
You need to be in a position where you can take testing rapidly.
Sorting truth from half-truth from complete fabrication is very time-consuming, and so she had some help from an AI algorithm.
If I were to manually fact-check a claim, it would take me on an average 2 to 3 hours, which is minimum, because we have to manually check all the sources, make sure our sources are reliable. But when AI steps in, our time is reduced by almost, I think, 70 to 80%. So we can turn a claim around in about 15 to 20 minutes so that reliable information is spreading as soon as possible.
You'll see it as soon as it's finished. You'll see it.
The first presidential debate was the team's first chance to work with a live video feed using the software.
Over the last 4 years, you have promised to repeal and replace Obamacare, but you have never in these 4 years come up with a plan.
The AI and human combination was able to fact-check 27 claims made by the candidates. Now, the software performed 2 tasks. First, it turned what was being said into text.
Private healthcare that they're very
That's
happy
simply
with.
not true.
Well, you're certainly going to
Which was no easy feat. So unsurprisingly, it did get a few things wrong. But for those claims it did manage to capture, it would then consult its huge database of pre-established facts that it had pulled out of thousands of articles from trusted sources.
Okay. The forest fires in the West are raging now. They have burned millions of acres.
Overall, almost a third of the claims made on the night were checked and verified by the machine alone.
Our confidence score is of 0.9. This means that the AI has also pulled in a link against which the extracted claim matches perfectly.
Even when the AI is fairly confident of its findings, Devika checks the results before it's published. For half of the remaining claims, the AI still returned results, but with less certainty, and so Devika had to pass her expert eyes over the source material first. The AI really struggled with 8 out of the 27 claims, which had to be fact-checked completely by hand. Now, this process still takes a little while, anything from 2 minutes up to more than 90 minutes for claims that have never been made before. So I asked the man behind Logically whether a late-breaking truth would still allow the lie to have its impact.
when you're putting your whole weight behind a claim and saying this is true or false or based on presently available information, unverifiable. I think some things that you certainly gain with latency, but they're not worth losing by getting things wrong every now and then.
Lyric Jane is a recent Cambridge University graduate, and he knows firsthand how misinformation can risk lives.
My grandmother passing away slightly prematurely, she read somewhere that if she gave her meds that were prescribed to her by a proper doctor and started drinking this special juice of some kind, that she'd live longer and she'd have a pain-free death, etc. And obviously all false.
But beyond the very real health risks that misinformation can pose, the stories around big political events in the last few years convinced him that something had to be done.
Be quite conscious that this is regardless of the outcome of both those specific democratic events. It just felt like process-wise something was broken with how we as individuals interacted with information online, how we were being shoved into various filter bubbles and echo chambers digitally, and these certainly were impacting the decisions that we were making in our personal lives, but also important decisions that we were making as a society.
For now, fact-checking services have become essential in this fight. But the defining change will ultimately come when the social networks are more able to stop this stuff going viral in the first place. I think it's time for a bit of star power. What do you reckon, Lara? Are you up for a bit of stardust?
Oh, definitely. Now, many a rock star and musician has swapped the mic for a go at being a movie star. Madonna's done it, Mick Jagger's done it, Beyonce too.
But these days, video games are bigger than music and film combined. So it's no surprise that some of the most famous names in rock, roll and rap have appeared in games.
Stormzy is one of the most successful names in the music industry right now, but he's going to be swapping his next gig from the stage at Glastonbury to the virtual streets of London in a video game.
Mark Chislak met Stormzy to chat about appearing in a game set in his hometown and about how the art form has grown up and is now tackling material that talks to the troubled times that we live in.
Multi-award-winning rapper Stormzy's new single Rainfall has a video with a bit of a difference. It features the Croydon-born musician as a video games character performing inside an actual game, the soon-to-be-released Watch Dogs Legion. I'm about to meet Stormzy in the flesh. The game that he's appearing in is set in a near future London and has themes of protest and resistance. I'm keen to find out if he thinks that this video game has any parallels with things that are going on in 2020. One of the game's main themes is about ordinary people banding together to resist and to fight back against an oppressive regime. Do you think that that's saying anything about the world that we live in right now?
It's very reflective in the times and in the sense of, we as people need to be coming together. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think they capture that perfectly in the sense of like your everyday person being more important than they probably realise, you know what I mean? So yeah, definitely.
A third-person action title, Watch Dogs Legion is set in a dystopian vision of a near-future London, a surveillance state controlled by corrupt corporate interests. The player can recruit and control any of the thousands of characters they encounter on London's streets, performing missions which will ultimately bring down the authoritarian regime.
All right, everyone!
Stormzy plays a version of himself, and in this fictional world he's a rapper whose message of resistance is transmitted via pirate video signal. He spent 3 days being performance captured at the game's developers Ubisoft's Toronto studios.
And then where am I blowing to?
Now, so, follow the GPS, that should take you there.
Whoa. Storms, what are you doing, lad?
Riding recklessly.
Absolutely reckless, yeah.
Is it that it's the back of Horse Guards, isn't it, down there?
It's so London, it actually blows my mind.
Is it special being in a game that's set in London?
Oh, it's the most. But I feel like I am London. Like London is me. Like I've got so much. Like I'm a proper London boy. Like through and through. Like, and it's my city, and I love it dearly. And it's a big part of who I am as a man and as an artist, and just my character. This is mad.
Yeah.
My bank's up there. Like literally, if I could, you know.
For people that don't know London, that's Coots & Co. Coots & Co is just up here at the same bank as Her Majesty the Queen.
Bro, that is me. That's more me than a flipping picture. This is mental.
Stormzy isn't the only musician to appear in a video game. He joins a long list of recording artists that includes the likes of 50 Cent. And who could forget David Bowie?
You're not the first video game player to get your soul trapped.
Some of these efforts could be put down to cashing in on a musician's star power in order to shift games, but sometimes it's about an artist pushing themselves by experimenting with a new medium. And there are points of convergence between the two art forms. There's a long history of music being used for protest and to provoke thought about things that are going on in the world today. Do you think that the video games have the power to do that as well?
100 million%. Like, I feel like any platform in whatever way, shape or form, like whatever mediums we use as creatives and artists, it's a platform for to speak out against injustice, for it to be like pillars of truth and whatnot. And especially with like video games, like even down to the reach of video games is astronomical. Yeah, 100%. I think especially the times we're in, anything can be a platform to speak out. Yeah.
Away from games and away from your music career, your bursaries to universities, to Cambridge, is up and running. How important is it that you use your position to do the things that you are doing?
I'm genuinely like so blessed. I feel like I've got so much platform and so much reach, and I find it my duty and my responsibility to share what I have.
Do you think that means that there's something wrong, that there's something that we need to think about things perhaps a little bit differently?
These things are set up to address the uneven and the injustices in a lot of these areas of society. So yeah, there's so many other, do you know what I mean, people of influence or artists or like public figures doing these things to try and just, do you know what I mean, uplift those who need it a bit more.
From best-selling grime artist to Glastonbury headliner, and now taking on the world of games, the South London star continues to shine.
Hello and welcome to the Week in Tech. It was the week that the US government filed a lawsuit against Google, accusing the company of violating competition law over internet searches and online advertising. Facebook rejected 2.2 million ads for breaking political campaigning rules, attaching false information warnings to a further 150 million posts. And after just 6 months, video streaming service Quibi is shutting down. The startup raised almost $2 billion for its launch, but suffered disappointing download and viewership numbers. It was also the week that NASA selected Nokia to build a wireless 4G network on the moon. The proposed cellular network is part of a plan to establish a long-term human presence on the moon by 2030. Developers of the COVID-19 contact tracing app for England and Wales reassured users that none of their data will be shared with the police. This followed news that contact details of people told to self-isolate by the NHS Test and Trace scheme in England are shared with the police on a case-by-case basis. Developers say the app operates independently of this system. And finally, would you fancy a new dress that changes with the seasons? Researchers at Yale University have developed a fabric with sensors and variable stiffness fibers that show the fabric responding to changes in temperature. When the fabric is cool, the particles solidify and stiffen, and when warm, they melt into liquid, softening the fabric.
While Microsoft and Sony are racing to be crowned champion in the next generation console wars, Nintendo has done something very Nintendo and said, never mind all that ultra high definition gaming, how about some augmented reality racing karts? This is Mario Kart Live Home Circuit, which takes the best-selling Nintendo game and turns your house into the racetrack. And the way this works is pretty clever. The kart contains a camera that streams live footage of your living room to the Nintendo Switch console, which you use as the remote control. In the box are 4 cardboard gates that you can set up around your home in whatever configuration the space will allow to form your racetrack. The software can recognise the gates as you drive through them, creating the course as you go. You also get these cardboard barriers with arrows on them that can help you navigate your track. And these too are recognised by the software and augmented with animations. Once you're set up, it's pretty much like a regular game of Mario Kart. There are other characters to race against, there are power-ups and weapons to use against them, but it's all taking place from a mouse eye view of your own living room. You can also race up to 4 of these karts together to play multiplayer in your living room if you've got the space, but you will need a Nintendo Switch console for each one. Now, it goes without saying that you need a fair bit of space to set this up, but you can arrange it in a modest sized living room. And that's because even though on screen it looks like your kart is zooming around the racetrack, in the real world, the kart is just sort of trundling around the living room fairly slowly. It can also make some pretty sharp turns, so you can set it up in a smaller room, although I do think you'd get more out of this with more space. There are some limitations to the software. Not all the power-ups work in the way you'd expect them to in the regular Mario Kart game. You can't hold a banana behind your kart to protect yourself from shells. And even though Bullet Bill does steer you around the track automatically, which I thought was quite impressive, it can't detect obstacles, so you end up crashing quite a lot. In fact, the augmented reality layer doesn't handle occlusion, so the racecourse track is always overlaid on top of the camera feed. So here, where the track should disappear behind this table leg, it doesn't, and that means you tend to crash more than you'd expect. Although that's part of the madness, and when you do crash, your character reacts on screen. The big question for all augmented reality applications is how much do you actually get out of this once you're over that initial moment of, ooh, this is cool. Most of the players I know that still play Pokemon Go have turned off the AR camera effects because even though they look cool, they ultimately add very little to the gameplay. And I think that may also be the issue here. But as with all augmented reality games, I'm left with the question, how is this better than just playing the original console game? And ultimately, I think it's not. It's just different. It's a different take on Mario Kart, and that's fine. It's hard to say whether this will have the same enduring appeal as the traditional console game, but Mario Kart is the best-selling game on the Nintendo Switch, so if any franchise can take AR mainstream, it's probably Mario Kart.
That was Chris turning his floor into a racetrack. How cool was that? Brilliant. And because we can't all go out as much as we'd like to at the moment, our homes have had to become our cinemas, our workspaces and our playgrounds. And that's what Lara's been looking at this week.
All you need is a projector. There are plenty of projectors promising to bring the cinema home, but there are also some quirkier options, as well as some that'll provide cinema on the go. It wasn't long ago that the idea of a projector turning any surface into a touchscreen, basically just like a tablet, would have seemed the stuff of sci-fi. But that is what the Hatchie Infinite does. Take a look at this. The Hatchie Infinite M1 projector uses deep learning, gesture controls, object recognition and what it calls skeleton recognition to be able to identify and focus on a surface as well as respond to a human's touch. I wasn't holding out particularly high hopes for the accuracy, especially when it came to typing on a keyboard like this. But actually, I found it was pretty good. The system runs on Android and can be paired with an Android or an iOS device. As well as being able to search the web and use some built-in apps and games, there's an AI-powered education feature to play with letters and blocks that it can recognise. A kitchen function is coming soon too, as is a fitness feature that is being claimed to track your moves, letting you know whether they're right or not. You can also use it to project on a wall, although when you do that, you no longer have the touch control available. It also needs to be very close to a wall, because if you do it too far away, you accidentally end up shining it on the ceiling and wondering what's going on. That's just wrong, although it is quite cool. Imagine turning up at your friend's house with this. No, it's not a drinks cooler, it's a 4K short throw projector, and pretty much everything you need should be built into the box. It streams the content, has got high quality speakers, and you can even operate it through Alexa or Google Home using your voice. The ViewSonic X10 4K vibrantly projects 8.3 million pixels on a picture up to 120 inches in size. The speakers provide clear, crisp sound, but maybe not up to the volume that the picture might beckon. In a device that's trying to do so much, setting it up to achieve full functionality did feel overcomplicated though. And clearly the standout feature here is that it's a portable 4K projector. At the lower end of the scale is this pocket projector, which you can connect directly to Wi-Fi or to your phone. Maybe you want to do a slideshow of some photos, or it can double up as a speaker. At a fraction of the price of most projectors on the market, of course your expectations of the ViewSonic M1 Mini Plus do need to be managed. Getting set up was simple, with a dial to focus and the ability to deal with a range of file types. I did start to have a few issues, a few glitches with the apps, but the sound quality is decent and it's a pretty versatile device, so at this price point, it's okay. And here's one for the kids. It comes complete with a parent portal so that parents can keep an eye on what the children are watching and prevent them from seeing anything that they shouldn't. Plus, it has sensors, so if a child comes within 60 centimetres of the light here, it'll automatically turn off to protect their little eyes. The Anker Nebula Astro also has all the streaming services built in, as well as the ability to connect via HDMI, USB-C or Bluetooth, providing a screen of up to 100 inches. It's a small but solid device. The setup and the use of all the streaming apps was really slick. The picture quality was sharp, and in fact, the sound was pretty decent for these speakers. But the price is high, and I think for a device aimed at kids, it may be too high. So there you have it, a few of the latest ways of bringing entertainment home. Unless, of course, you'd rather entertain yourself than spend your hard-earned cash on a virtual screen.
Wow, that projected touchscreen was amazing.
Yes, it got far more attention in my house than most of the gadgets I'm caught testing. My husband was fascinated. My daughter played noughts and crosses. I'm sorry you haven't had a chance to play.
One day, one day. OK, well, let's go from projecting things onto surfaces to projecting things into the sky with lasers. Back in June, we told you that laser maestro Seb Lee Delisle had been showing his appreciation to carers and NHS staff by projecting love and thanks across his home city of Brighton. After a trial earlier this month, Laserlight City is happening this weekend in Leeds. With cities under lockdown and local autumn light shows unable to happen, the idea here is that 25 lasers mounted on buildings around the city will put on a show that residents can see regardless of restrictions on social gatherings. Seb created all of the control software himself, but this is an interactive show, meaning thousands of people were able to log on to a special website and take control of the lasers, changing the colour, shapes and direction of the beams, which could be seen up to 10 miles away. As the dark nights draw in, Seb's hoping that he can light up more cities and bring a little laser sparkle to these unusual autumn evenings. Anyway, that is it for this week.
You can find the team online throughout the week on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook and Twitter at BBC Click.
Thanks for watching and we'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.